This episode is brought to you by Absolute Landscapes. Absolute Landscapes is a landscape maintenance company that focuses heavily on commercial property maintenance. Call today for information about the services we provide and how we can best help you. 803-427-5944.
Into the middle of it. I guess, man, if you want to start out, just kind of preface it for anybody who doesn't know, just kind of introduce yourself and maybe a little bit of backstory, kind of bring us up to speed. I know we talked about this last time, but if you just kind of want to give the quick version of it, I guess maybe just kind of introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Again, Cody, thanks for having me back on here on your podcast. I really appreciate that. I really enjoyed the first one. Was really looking forward to the second one here. So, and looking forward to the second one because we're going to start getting into more of the martial arts and how that played a part in my life and definitely how that played a part in my coaching is the way I coach as well too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my name is Carlos Bergante. I currently live in Brazil. Followed my passion, which was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu many years ago. I started training Jiu-Jitsu in 2002. Maybe the same way a lot of other people got introduced through Jiu-Jitsu was watching the first UFC with Royce Gracie, and I was hooked. And I was like, man, I want to do that. And at the time, there was a brown belt that was Brazilian in Virginia, which is where I'm originally from. And I'll never forget, man, I went into class and I was working out a lot and I was training martial arts. So I was already training Kung Fu. I had a black belt in Taekwondo. Martial arts was a big thing for me growing up. And I remember I walked into this class and there was, I was lifting weights. And like I said, I trained other martial arts. So I was pretty strong, I thought,
Right.
and I walked in there and I rolled with the very first person I rolled with was this skinny guy. He must have weighed like $150 maybe. I was pushing 200, I remember he had to take his glasses off and put them to the side before we started training. Nerdy looking guy. And I was like, I'm going to take it easy on him. Right. I'm going to take it easy on him. And I remember he got me in an arm bar in like a minute. And I was like, damn. And I was like, whoa, and I was like, damn, man. And we were doing 7-minute rounds. He got me in an arm bar in the first minute, and in 7 minutes, he must have tapped me out 4 times. And I was like, dude, I got to learn this, man. I was hooked after that, man. So, I think we dove into it a little bit faster. I know that was supposed to be an intro, but,
no, it's all good, man. I'll just say for anybody who wants to know like more of your backstory or more of your, the business side of things, I would just tell people to go to, I think it was episode 11 with you. Episode 11 with Carlos. It's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. So now this is something I didn't know. You said you had a black belt in Taekwondo before you even started jiu-jitsu.
That's correct. Yeah.
So you have 2 black belts.
Yes, that's correct.
Oh man. Yeah. Okay. Cause I meet a lot of, well, I don't meet, but I've met some guys and you hear about a lot of guys. It's either a black belt in one or the other, but you have 2 different, you have a basically a striking and a grappling, that you're there. But that's crazy, man. How long did it take for with the Taekwondo? How long did you train that?
Man, I'm going to tell you. So, when I was growing up, right, I started doing what's called Vietnamese Kung Fu. It's basically Kung Fu, but my instructor at the time, he was Vietnamese, and it was his style of Kung Fu. So it was I liked it, and I started training that at a really young age. I believe maybe I was 7 or 8, and I did that for a couple years, and then we moved, and there were. I really liked martial arts. My dad was a big martial arts fan, and there was a Taekwondo school, where we were at, near where we were at. And a matter of fact, it was me, my brother, my sister, and then at one point, even all of my cousins and my mom was training, and my mom and my aunts were training all Taekwondo at the time. And so they also, in this Taekwondo school, they also had Filipino martial arts, and my background's Filipino as well, my nationality. And they had what's called arnis, which is stick fighting and knife fighting and hand fighting, right?
Yep.
And so I was also training that. But so I got into Taekwondo, and we trained there I was about 8 or 9 at the time, and I guess I stopped when I was 8, 9, 10, about 14. So about 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
6 years I trained Taekwondo, and
Okay.
I got my black belt in Taekwondo in about 5 years. 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if Taekwondo is like jujitsu with like as far as like the adults and children. I think jujitsu has more belts for children versus adults, and I think the reason is to motivate the children more. But I did Taekwondo a little bit as a kid, and I think I got to a yellow belt or something, not very far along at all.
Mm-hmm.
But man, that's impressive, man. 2 black belts. That's crazy. How long? So I'm assuming it probably took longer to get the jujitsu black belt than the
Yes.
taekwondo. Yeah.
Yes. Um, it did. So it took me 13 years to get my jujitsu black belt, right? And
Yeah.
they say the average is about 10 to 13 years, right?
Yep.
10 to 13 years. And so I started my jujitsu journey, like I said, when I was living in Virginia. I was living in Virginia. I was 14 when I quit training Taekwondo, and I was a teenager. And to be honest with you, I kind of like, if you listen to the first podcast, you'll know that I kind of went astray in my teens. This is when my father and my mother had a divorce. I was in my teens. I was 14, and I was just like, screw this now. I don't, I didn't want, I was running with the wrong crowd, and I just went astray. And the
Yep.
thing about martial arts, when I was doing martial arts or playing any sports at that matter, I was at my best. So I kind of like, things were really in a compression stage in this time of my life, 14, 15 years old. I'm a teenager. I'm trying to fit in. And a lot of my friends were going out partying and things like that. And at the same time, my parents were having a divorce. So I kind of like quit all sports almost at the time. And I just started running with the crowd, for a lack of a better word, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so I did that for many years. I did that, for many years. And, in the first podcast, you'll hear that, when I wasn't playing sports, I was drinking and doing a lot of drugs. And so from my teenage years to about my mid 20s, I was in a lot of trouble, in and out of jail, in and out of incarceration. And so, in 2002, was when I started training jujitsu. And so I mentioned that story. I saw the first, it was actually a replay of the UFC. And so I saw Royce Gracie win the first UFC. And I was like, man, I gotta find out where I can try this. And so I found a place, and like I said, I started training there. And the guy was Brazilian. Gustavo Machado is his name. He was one of the very, 2002, there was not a lot of jiu-jitsu in the United States.
Right.
And he was a brown belt. He came from Rio, and he trained under the Gracies, and he was one of the first pioneers to come to the East Coast, because a lot of the jiu-jitsu was on the West Coast in California and things like that. And so he was one of the very first pioneers to actually be on the East Coast. I think it was like Renzo Gracie, which was up in New York, and then it was Gustavo Machado, which was in Virginia. So I was very lucky to have him that like kind of near. It was about a 30-minute drive from where I was, but I was like, man, I got to see what this is all about. Ground fighting, I never knew. So I started training in 2002, and I think I trained about 2 years straight. I got my blue belt in a year because I was so hooked. That first year of jiu-jitsu, I was just training and competing and training and competing. And when you train and compete, you see your level just rise, just rise up. And then, so I got my blue belt in a year. And I believe I was about 6 months into my blue belt. And I mentioned this on the first podcast, but I ended up moving out of the United States. I ended up going to the Philippines, to following the love of my life at that time, which was a college exchange student that I met. So I ended up going to the Philippines, and I really dedicated my life at that time to trying to start this business up in the Philippines, and just be in this relationship, And so I kind of stopped training, to be honest with you. while I was there. And when I stopped training, guess what happened? I started drinking again a lot, right? I got overweight. I started smoking a lot, and to make a long story short, if to make to condense it short, because all of that is in the first podcast. Found out that my wife was cheating on me at the time. I lost my business, and it wasn't all her fault. I had a lot to play in that. Like I said in the first podcast, at the time I didn't even know how to be a husband or a man at that point. To be honest with you, I didn't have that positive role figure there. But without the training and things like that to help me mentally, I just really sunk into this hole. I mean, my business failed. My marriage was failing. I was overweight. I was drinking again, like a lot. And so, I was a total wreck at the time. And so they did have jujitsu in the Philippines. They did have jujitsu in the Philippines there. And so I met a couple guys there. I said, man, I gotta do something. I gotta do something with my life. I just can't stay like this. And basically, I started training there in the Philippines as well too. So I got back into training there, started really getting myself back into shape, I guess you can say. So I started training in the Philippines there with a group of guys. And I really started getting back into jujitsu. And so I stayed there majority of the time as a blue belt. And then a couple of years later, I would say 2006, 2007, I flew back to the United States to go visit my family in Virginia. And I went back to my original instructor, Gustavo Machado. And I trained there for a couple months, and I got my purple belt around 2007. And then I left again and went back to the Philippines, continued training there. And I around the same time, this story's in the first podcast. I got a job that let me work basically remotely around this time. I was able to work remotely, working for a company in the U.S. working remotely. So I had the opportunity to travel and work. And so I found out there was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in Thailand, right? And this guy in Thailand, this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and he was the only one in Asia at the time that was a Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and he was there in Phuket, Thailand, at Tiger Muay Thai. It's a famous training facility now. A lot of the top UFC fighters go there to train their striking. But when I went there at the time, it was very small. It was a really small training facility. Everything was outdoors, and so the Muay Thai fighters wanted to learn ground techniques because everybody was getting into MMA nowadays, right? So you couldn't survive at this time just being a pure striker in MMA. You had to learn the ground techniques. So they brought in this Brazilian guy, Tony Eduardo is his name, to Thailand to help train these Muay Thai fighters the ground game, right? And so I heard about this when I was living in the Philippines. I'm like, man, a couple of the guys that I was training jiu-jitsu with in the Philippines, they were expats also. They were Americans living there in the Philippines, and they were training jiu-jitsu with me. And we were like, let's go to Thailand and train with this guy. He's the only black belt in Asia. So we ended up, and they were working remote too, right? So the three of us went to Thailand, and we actually lived there for a year. We lived there for a year training with Tony Eduardo, right? So we were training with Tony there, helping him out, training there. I trained some Muay Thai there with the guys as well too. But my main objective was I really loved jiu-jitsu, so we were mixing that up, training some MMA, training jiu-jitsu, training pure striking. And so, I lived there for a year, and Tony was like, man, what are you doing here? I noticed that you're going to most of the jiu-jitsu classes. Cause this was my thing. Like I went to the Muay Thai classes and the MMA classes, but like 70% of the time it was like whenever they had a pure grappling or jiu-jitsu class, that's where I would show up. I would go to all of those. Right.
Right.
And he's like, man, I'm coming here because you're the only black belt in Asia. And I want to train jiu-jitsu. And he's like, well, man, I'm going back to Brazil in a couple months. And I want to invite you to come there. If you want to train jiu-jitsu, I mean, you work remotely. Why don't you come to the motherland of jiu-jitsu, Brazil? And And I was like, huh. It's funny because they didn't click until that time. I was like, yeah, I can work with them. I could go train there with all the best guys at that time were in Brazil, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah. So he ended up leaving, made some plans, and I kind of wanted to not just go straight there, right? So I basically took my time to getting to Brazil. So I flew back to go see my family in the United States, hung out with them for a month, and then I made my way down to Brazil. So I flew into Mexico, and I made my way down from Mexico through Central America, through South America into Brazil, right? So I was staying at these places like at a month at a time, maybe 2 months. And I would just be training at different academies in these places, right? So I went to Mexico, trained over there. I went to, Panama. I trained over there with a bunch of guys. And man, that was one of the greatest experiences of my life, because like jiu-jitsu is like soccer. It's like universal. Now, if you go, they got jiu-jitsu everywhere, right?
Oh yeah.
And at this time, there was, it wasn't as famous, but it was getting there. Like there were jujitsu, there was a lot of jujitsu academies. There was probably like one in every country, or two maximum. But like I was training there, and you just get, when you're rolling on the mats and that you train and you're trying to like, you're sweat and blood with these guys, you become friends, like best friends instantly. Like you just have this bond, So it's like I go there and you go to academy and you train with them, and it's like this bond like right away. So I'm hanging out with them. They're inviting me over to the place, and it's just a totally different thing. It's like you have family wherever you go, and that's that jiu-jitsu family. That's that jiu-jitsu community. So I met a lot of friends just through traveling and training at different academies that I'm in touch with right now. I mean, they're all on my Facebook. They're all on my Instagram, And so basically I made my way down to Brazil. And Tony Eduardo is from where I live in now in Brazil. He lives in, which is this place called Florianopolis, which is the state called Santa Catarina. But I wanted to go to places where that I seen on TV, that I heard this is the motherland of jiu-jitsu, which is like Rio de Janeiro, where they got the statue where the Gracie family lives, right? Or Sao Paulo, these are the hubs where jiu-jitsu first started. So I didn't go straight to where Tony was at, to where I live at now. I went to these other places, right? So I went to Rio, right? Rio. And so I went to the Gracie Academy there, Gracie Baja, and I trained there for a little bit. And then I went to Gracie Humaitá, which is in Ipanema. And it's, Rio's a beautiful city. I got nothing against Rio, right? It was just, it's extremely violent there. And if you don't know how to speak the language, you don't go walking on the streets at night, right? You don't go out at night over there. It's not a friendly place for people that aren't from there. And the reason why is because Ipanema is a really nice neighborhood, right? It's I would say it's middle class to upper class neighborhood, right? But literally, like right across the street is the favela, right? It's like this mountain of just really, it's a poor neighborhood. It's a very poor neighborhood, and it's literally right across the street, right? And so the first time I went into Ipanema, I'll never forget it. I was staying at a friend's, another expat apartment, right? And he works remotely too, and we were working remotely, and we heard gunshots in the favela across the street, right? And we looked out the window, and there's a couple high-rise buildings there, but then you can see in the favela across the street, there was a helicopter that was flying around the favela. And like these favelas are on the side of these big mountains, right? So you got these big mountains, and you just got all these shanty towns, or favelas, or what they call it, right? And the police officers don't enter there. Police officers, only people that live there enter there. You know what I mean? And so there's this police helicopter flying around, and they got this guy in the helicopter. He's shooting down into the favela. There's guys in the favela shooting up at this helicopter, right? This is
Oh
going
man.
on. This is going on for like 3 hours. They're just like pow, 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 pow. Then they got like a police force of these armored cars at the bottom of the favela, and they look like they're just gonna make a run for it. They're like basically like they're armored vehicles, you know.
Yeah.
But there's black smoke coming because the road that they go up to is being blocked by the gangsters that are in the favela, like burning tires and cars. And this was like my second day there. And I was like, damn, this is crazy, right? And we're sitting in his apartment, you know, we're working remotely, and we turn on the TV, we see what's going on over there. They're like, oh, it's another gunfight that's happening in the favela. The crazy thing is when I looked out the window and looked down, and like I said, this is across the street. You can hear some of the bullets kind of ricocheting off of the buildings too, right? So I looked down at the bottom of the street, out the window at the bottom, and the people down there, it's a normal day. They're just walking and going to
Oh
work.
geez.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah. And I look at my friend. He's been living there as an expat for like 3 years. He's like, this is it, man. This is normal. In the beginning, he's like, you'll get used to it. You'll get used to it, right? This is normal. Just don't go over to the other side of the street, and you'll be safe. And don't go at night. And if you do, don't speak English. And I'm like, man, I don't know if I can live like this, because basically you're waiting to be robbed. You know, you're just
for
waiting.
real.
You're waiting for something to happen to you. You know, and I was like, man, I don't know if I could live like this, man. Like it scares me because you know the people there, this is normal for them. This is everyday life. So I was supposed to stay there for like a month and just, you know, stay with him and train there with him. And I only ended up staying a week, man, because I just didn't like watching my back all the time
Right.
and just that type of environment. So I ended up coming down south and coming to this island called Florianopolis, right? So it's an island off the southern coast of Brazil, and it's considered the Hawaii of South America, right?
Right.
It's beautiful. Even the soccer team that's from this place, it's called Avaí, and what that's translated to in English is Hawaiian, right? Like this is how
Okay.
much the culture is here. And so yeah, I ended up coming here in 2010 to where I live now. And you know, I trained at a couple of academies over here as well too. And then I found my home. They had a Gracie Academy here called Gracie Floripa, and some of the Gracie family lives over here too. So they ended up opening up an academy here. Yeah, this is where I got my brown belt, and then I got my black belt in 2015 here in Brazil. Yeah. So
That's
that's
crazy,
kind of
man.
the story, man.
So I got a couple different questions about that. I know when you were on the first time, I think you touched on this, and if you didn't, or if I'm misspeaking, let me know, because I can cut this if this isn't something. But there was an addiction involved somewhere, right? Was that right?
Yes. Yes.
Are we okay to keep this in here? Like, are you okay to
Yeah.
touch on this? Okay,
Yes,
because
for
the
sure.
reason I'm asking about this is I want to, like, so when you originally started jujitsu,
Mm.
before any belt, was that after the addiction, or were you still kind of fighting that, or when was, I mean, because I'm trying to put it together. I think when you told me last time, I don't know, man. I want to say you said that you had already, you know, you were recovering and everything by the time you
Yeah.
started jujitsu. Is that right?
Well, so my addiction, the one that was really bad for me was alcohol, man. My alcoholism, you know. And so when I started jujitsu, I was still drinking, you know. I was still drinking. When I was in Virginia, I was still drinking. It wasn't as bad as I would say. Like I would say, like, yeah, I'm a weekend drinker, but I would
Right.
have these fluctuations. I would have these fluctuations of drinking a lot and then not. And the thing about it is that so at what was really bad was this when it got really bad with training and jujitsu and my addiction is that most of the jujitsu classes were at night, right? You know, I would start training like 6 or 7 o'clock, right? And so a lot of times I would take some kind of stimulant or pre-workout, you know, and so I would take that and then I would go train. And so the thing was, like, after, it would be really hard for me with your adrenaline pumping and the pre-workout to really go to sleep. and it was really difficult for me. And that's when my addiction really kicked in, because then I caught myself every single night drinking myself to sleep. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I got you.
the addiction was still there. The addiction was still there as far as alcohol. And I did that for many years. Like I got to the point where I was almost downing a whole bottle of wine sometimes just to try to get to sleep at night, you know? So it was still there. It was only, I would say, about 6 years ago that I just dropped everything. I was able to drop the drugs. I was able to, and when I say drugs, I would say like I was smoking marijuana about like every day, and I was drinking a lot as well too. And now I've just been completely sober, like nothing at all,
Yeah.
And
Well,
so,
congratulations on that, by the way.
yeah,
I know
thank you.
that's huge, man. So the reason I was asking about that is because you
Yeah.
also mentioned too, when you, I think you said you were maybe going through a divorce or at the very least a breakup or something. When you said your wife or fiance or girlfriend was cheating on you, and then you lost the business also, and then you said at that point you picked jujitsu back up. I think you said that's when you were a blue belt at that point, maybe, and then
Yes.
you kind of got, I guess you could say you got serious about it again. And the reason I was asking that is because I wanted to see if the way it sounded was that jujitsu helped you out between two really tough periods of your life, is what it sounded like. And I just wanted to make sure that I was right on that, that I wasn't misinterpreting that.
Man, jujitsu helped me so much, man. It's a way of life for me. It's like therapy for me.
Right.
It's my counselor. It's my church. I hate to say it that way, but it does, it fulfills a lot of things, and it helps me out with
Mm-hmm.
just the day to day, um, it's a lot of things for me. So yes, it did help me out. And I think like I said in the beginning, when I'm not active, and I look at it this way, because there's a balance between your body and your mind, right? If
Yep.
your body is not sound, which means you're not taking care of yourself, which means you're not working out, you're not moving, then your mind is the same too. Your mind is not 100%.
Mm-hmm.
You can't think well, you're cloudy, you just don't think right? And I noticed this relation in my parents, my mother especially said, when you're active, when you're doing sports, you're the best Carlos, you know, and when you're not the best Carlos, you're not performing at 100%,
Mm-hmm.
and I finally put these two together. And so now I need to, make sure I'm physically active, training jujitsu or working out or something like that, because jujitsu incorporates a lot of things, like you're not just training. A lot of people start training and they're overweight and they're fat
Mm-hmm.
and they have these really bad habits. They have these addictions, but it's because you're so hooked on jujitsu, because you want to be better at jujitsu. You
Mm-hmm.
stop these things. You see yourself start to lose weight, right? You start seeing you're getting some stomach muscles. So then you start eating better, you know, you see that maybe drinking on the weekends or drinking every day is hindering yourself, and you're not able to show up in jiu-jitsu the next day or something like that. Then you get rid of that. You know what I mean? It just encompasses and it pushes out those bad habits, you know? And so, I don't even know if this is answering your question, but yes, jiu-jitsu has definitely saved my butt a lot of times, in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see I see your point on that, man. And like one thing I think I love about jujitsu is it gets you out of that comfort zone.
Oh,
It's I mean, especially when you're in as like a brand new white belt, you're only a couple months in this thing like I am. I mean, it gets you out of that comfort zone. And it is not a comfortable place to be. Like if somebody is on you on mount, and your arms are locked up and you're not sure where to go from there, like that's a very uncomfortable spot to be in. But
yeah.
as you go on, you learn things, and it kind of gets you out of that comfort zone. And I love that, man. I love
Yeah.
that because it's. I think we talked about this last time too. You were talking about this outlet, this sports, this energy. If we don't have a healthy way to put a healthy direction for that, it's very easy for it to get down the wrong direction.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to touch on that, Cody, because you brought up a very important point there, like it gets you out of your comfort zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have this saying, and a lot of people that are in the personal development department know this, like growth happens outside of your comfort zone, right?
Right.
Growth happens outside of your comfort zone. And it's funny you brought that up in jiu-jitsu, right? Like when you're uncomfortable, you know, you basically got two options. If the guy's mounted on you and you don't know how to get out of there, you know, you're squiggling around, you don't know how to move, you don't know where to put your hands, you know, you don't know any placement or anything like that. So you're squiggling around and you're just burning energy. And so you're probably going to stay there, you know, but, and you're very uncomfortable. So two things, either you're going to just settle and stay there, or you're going to find out and find a way to get out of there, which means either asking someone that's more advanced than you, you know, or I don't know, would that be, some people watch YouTube videos, but generally it's asking your instructor, someone that's more advanced. Hey man, how do you get out of the mount position? How do you do this? And then you have to practice, you know, and you have to put in the reps to get out of that. Now, if we take that and put that in life, right? Let's say we're trying to open up a business, right? And we hit this roadblock, right? And we feel uncomfortable. We feel uncomfortable because we don't know how to get past this point. You know, it's difficult or what have you. You know, you can either just stay there. It's kind of like in jiu-jitsu. You can just stay there and feel uncomfortable, you know, or you can find somebody that's already done the thing that you wanted to do, you know, that's more advanced than you, that's ahead of you, to ask the questions. And then you know that you're going to need to put in the reps. You may fail. The first time you try to get out of the mount, you're probably going to get remounted, but you took it a little bit further. Now you know where to place your hands. Now you know you have to lift up your hip. Now you know you got to put your heels closer to your butt so that you can get your hip up, right? Now you know these things. So you're getting steps to get closer to getting out of the mount. And it's the same thing with business or whatever it is in life, right? So now you know that, hey, you got to do this thing and this thing. And then you do those things, but then you may hit another roadblock, you may fail. So then you go back and then you repivot, or you add more onto it until you get over that hump. And the same with jiu-jitsu, right? You add onto it and then you finally know how to get out of the mount, you know? And so like that's what I'm saying. Like with jiu-jitsu, the philosophy in there, you can take so much of that and put that into life and know that it'll work in jiu-jitsu. If it works in jiu-jitsu and you know that, and you could instill that and then imply these philosophies in life, you're bound for success. You know, that's why I feel like jiu-jitsu's life, man. Jiu-jitsu is life, you know?
Yeah, that's very beautifully said, man. I love the way you worded that. And I love the analogy there, because like, as you're saying this, I'm thinking about my own experience, and that's 100% true, because, you know, the mount situation that I was telling you about, that's actually something that happened last night. Like, I was training, I was rolling, and I was like, man, I was there, I knew what to do. And then I had a guy in closed guard, you know, I knew what to do. And I was like, I was thinking about this on the way home. I was like, man, I knew what to do. Like, now I know what to do. Like, this is what I should have done, you know, try a sweep or whatever. And it's like, I found myself too doing that in my business, you know, about a week ago or so. I tried to submit a quote for something. I had some errors in there. So I basically, as the saying goes, went back to the drawing board. Okay, well, what did I do wrong? This is what I should have done. This is how I could have, you know, done this better. And that's 100% true, man. That's 100% true. You can take that philosophy and you can apply it, you know, in different areas in life. And I don't think it's never like one branch of thing. Like, so the actual like training of jiu-jitsu, that's like a branch of a tree. You know what I'm saying? Like the lesson itself is the tree. And then the whatever it branches off to, it can branch off. Like, that lesson can be applied in jiu-jitsu, in your professional life, your career, your business, your intimate life, you know, wherever. I mean, yeah. So I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree that these lessons can be applied in different areas. But to go back to the original point, you know, I don't know if we can learn those lessons without putting ourselves in that situation to begin with. You know, if we're kind of, to use the word complacent, if we're just kind of complacent and comfortable and just kind of happy where we are, I mean, you know, I just feel like the likelihood of improvement from there is very, very small, very unlikely. You know?
And that's what's so beautiful about jiu-jitsu, because the thing is, when you go train, there's always going to be people that are better than you. So what does that mean? You're going to be uncomfortable. Every time you train, you're going to be uncomfortable. Even if you're a black belt in a room, right? You're going to be uncomfortable at some point during training. So what does that do to your mentality, right? You are going to be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And so when it's and so when you're comfortable being uncomfortable, you know that, hey, I'm uncomfortable right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we imply in jiu-jitsu, I'm uncomfortable right now. I'm in a position where I don't know, so I just got to breathe. That's the first thing, right? Because when you stop breathing, everything stops functioning,
For
right?
sure. For
Everything stops,
sure.
right? You can't think right, you can't move, your muscles just freeze up, and then that's it. You're tapping or you're going to sleep, right? So you got to breathe. That is the basis right there. And so we imply that in life, right? If we're uncomfortable being uncomfortable on the mat, then we know if we get in this place in life, let's just say it's our relationship with
Mm-hmm.
our significant other, it's like, man, it's getting uncomfortable over here, right? I feel like screaming. I feel like punching the wall. I feel like just, you know, if we imply that, I just need to breathe first, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just need to concentrate on my breath right now so that I can start thinking more logically, right? So I can speak and not yell, you know, and then start thinking about the things that I may have learned to communicate better, or things that may have learned to get out of this position, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, there's just so much there, you know. And if you don't know how to get out of this position, and you're uncomfortable in this position, you know that someone else has already done this. Someone already has gotten out. You don't feel alone. So let's say you're in your relationship, right? You don't know how to figure this communication thing out with your wife. You guys
Mm-hmm.
aren't communicating anymore. If you relate that to jiu-jitsu philosophy, there's other men that have probably been through that, you know. So then you can find those mentors, you can find those people that are black belts at relationships, to ask them, how did you get through this type of thing? How did you get through the communication with this, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so being uncomfortable doesn't mean that you have to stop. It just means that you're in a growth stage right now, you know.
Yep.
And you know, when you're uncomfortable, that means you're growing. And this is something that I ask a lot of my coaching clients, right? One of the ones, one of the main questions I said, man, how uncomfortable are you right now in your life from a scale of 1 to 10? And they're like, man, I'm like a 3, man. I'm really, you know, my life is very uncomfortable for me right now, you know. And they look at it as something very negative, right? Everything's
Mm-hmm.
happening bad for me. Well, I'm
Yep.
like, man, the next couple months is a growth stage for you. You're uncomfortable because you're growing right now. You know what I mean? And that's the same thing. And so, like, every time we go on the mat and we're uncomfortable, we're putting ourselves in the uncomfortable position. Even if we're not putting it, someone more advanced is going to put us in that uncomfortable position. That means you're in a growth phase. That means that particular time that you're rolling and you're uncomfortable for those 10 minutes or whatever, that means you're going to grow from that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I got you. Carlos,
Yeah.
I want to go back for a second on what you said. Let me just say, as a white belt, like a very, very new white belt, the breathing is like 100% important, man. I have tapped before just because I couldn't breathe. But I want to say too, man, there's a couple different things that I do in my life that I feel like, challenge me. There's the jujitsu and the martial arts, and there's the gym, there's trying to grow a business and learn a business. There's my personal life and intimate life, family and relationships and things. But I think of all the things that I do, man, one of the hardest things that's the hardest to stay consistent with is the ice bath, is cold water therapy. I don't know what this is Celsius, but the temperature that I use is about 43 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm in there for like 4 minutes. I'll do that about 3 times a week, sometimes 4, but at least 3. But man, that it sucks, man. Like it's like, but it's like it's getting over that mental hump to get in there. And you talk about being uncomfortable. Like when you put yourself in those uncomfortable situations, you prove yourself to yourself. You're building your trust in yourself, your self-confidence in yourself. And you were talking about these guys like your coaching clients. If they feel like that life is happening to them and that's the reason that they're uncomfortable, it's like it's them versus this thing. But if if a person voluntarily puts themselves in an uncomfortable situation, it's like you versus you. Because when a person can be victorious over their own self, I don't know if there's anything else that can hurt. There's an African proverb, I'm pretty sure it's an African proverb, that says when there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do you no harm. And
Mm-hmm.
dude, if you can overcome that voice that says, "Hey, just take it easy, don't do this, take the easy way out, be comfortable, stay comfortable." If you can overcome that voice, man, I don't know if there's anything. It's like David Goggins talks about it armors your mind. It builds like an armored mind. And I don't know how else to put it other than that. I mean, that's a very good way to describe it, because it builds that mental resilience and that mental discipline. And again, you take that and you put it in other areas in life,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and I don't know, when you look at a thing as it's not as happening to you, it's like how you are reacting to yourself. It makes a big, like, in other words, don't react to the problem, react to yourself. And
Yeah.
it's easy, man. It's easy to take that, that voice that's inside of us that just wants us to stay safe and comfortable. It's always there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that, man. Like you said, happening to you, right?
Mm.
Like life is happening to you. And I always tell them, man, life doesn't happen to you, right? Because if
Yep.
life's happening to you, that means you're just sitting around and just waiting for things to happen, right?
Yep.
So
Exactly.
life is happening through us.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It's happening through us. We make it happen, by taking actions daily, and what you said there, it's you versus you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I learned, I think, when I was a purple belt going into a brown belt. Like, I really realized that, right? Because I used to compete a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that competing in jiu-jitsu and going to competitions was me versus this other dude, which, if you're watching it, that's what it looks like. It's like two people, like,
Yeah.
that's what it is. But it's higher than that, man. There's
Mm-hmm.
another level than just you versus this other guy, right? It's really you versus you at that. It is you versus that old you. It's you versus, like, what's going on in your mind. There's so many things in there. Like, just working, if you're going to go compete, it's you actually just stepping on the mat.
Yep.
And because there's so many negative thoughts in there, man. There's like, man, what am I doing here? Am I really up for this? There's so much fear in
Mm-hmm.
unlimited in limiting beliefs going into a competition. Am I ready for this? What am I doing here? I'm going to get hurt, and it's you versus you. It's you versus this, and just stepping into that fear, and so if we take that philosophy and look at it in the daily life, and you put that in there, we all have fears, man. We all have limiting beliefs on whether that be starting a business, or, the fear of being abandoned, or the fear of failure, and that holds us back. But when we learn that it's me versus that thing that's in our head, that made up fear that we're thinking, it's
Yep.
it's us versus us. I
Mm-hmm.
think the only thing that they have the sayings, like, the only thing that you're really competing in or competing at is not that other person, is that person who you were yesterday. You always want to be
Exactly.
better than that person that you were yesterday, man. And that's what I learned, man. It is you versus you. It's not you versus this other guy. It's you versus you every time you step on the mat.
Yeah. And just to reinforce that too, man, it's like, just think about it this way. You step on the mat with another guy. Okay. Let's say that you, first of all, you're already putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation. This guy is trained maybe just as hard or harder than you. Maybe he's trained longer than you, maybe not quite as long, whatever it is, but you're already uncomfortable getting onto the mat. But let's say this person, they win on the mat, you tap, or they submit you or whatever. If that person wins, they're really kind of, I mean, yes, they had to train to get there and they had the competition, but they're kind of almost in the same place they were to begin with. But if you went out there and didn't really want to and competed anyways, you're at another level than you were before you began. So maybe you didn't technically win on the mat, but you won that battle with yourself. So you're already, I know it sounds so, man, it sounds so like personal growthy and like motivational speaky to say you don't win or lose, you only learn.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
no
that
such
was
thing as
crossing my mind.
losing. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's no such thing as losing. You just learn. But it is that, though. It is that, if
it
you,
is.
because if you were the one, and I'm not saying that, the other person's probably uncomfortable too, of course, but if you lose, you won that battle with yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
It,
Not only that, man, like, they have this saying in jujitsu. They use that a lot. You either win or you learn. There is no
right,
losing, right?
right.
But man, when you go and you compete, and you lose, man, you learn so much, man. And it's true, because you leave the competition and that's all you think about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about anybody else, but I know, like, when I go and I lose in a competition, that's something that I really get obsessed about. In my head, I'm like, man, what did I do wrong here?
Yep.
What did I do wrong? Did I not break his grip? Or, should I have not pulled guard, or should I have taken him down here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where did it go wrong? And then that's the thing. That's the self-improvement part, is then you start working on those things that you did wrong, that you may have messed up at, And so, yeah, you learn so much. But then when you win, you win, you're like, yeah, all right, cool. I'm good there. And that's kind of it. You take your medal. Now, sometimes a lot of people do reflect,
Mm-hmm.
and I do too, but you don't reflect as much. In my opinion, you don't reflect as much unless you lose. If you lose, you're reflecting about, like, a lot more things in depth. When you win, you kind of celebrate, and then you kind of reflect,
Mm-hmm.
But losing makes you reflect, for me, a lot more. I mean, like, even if I think about my life, all the places where I think I had failed, like whatever that may be, in my business or in my relationships in the past, those failures stick out more to me than the wins in my life,
Yep.
because those had the most lessons, right? Those brought me to
Right.
where I am right now. I would rather talk about all my failures than I would my wins, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I really love, man, about like where I'm at now in the martial arts journey, because it's only up from here. Everything is a lesson. Every time I go in, you were talking about reflecting and thinking about what you did wrong in a competition. That's me every time I train. Like every time I go in there and train on the drive home, I'm like, man, I should have done this. Like, how can I get out of this? Like, what should I have done there? But that's one thing I love about it right now. It's only up from here. Everything. And I think that's one thing that maybe we don't think about when we learn a new skill or start something new. Like, you're only going up. Yeah, you might get beat up to begin with, and it might be hard to start out with, but man, there's so much room for improvement.
Yeah.
I mean, and I mean, maybe I might be looking at that the wrong way, because I feel like there are sometimes, when I'm training, sometimes, very few times, when I feel like I actually do the right thing, I roll the right way or whatever. But most of the time, man, it's just a learning process, and it's just, and the guys that I train with, they all try to tell me, look, that first 6 months, maybe first year, you're going to feel like you don't know what the hell is going on. But yeah, man, it's just, God, it's such a learning process, and it's really easy to get discouraged during that time, that first initial, learning curve or whatever is very, very easy to get discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes I feel like, well, maybe I should know this. I should have known what to do here, or I should have, whatever. And then you get in this mental cycle with yourself, and that's not productive for anybody. But yeah, man, that reflecting is you have to reflect. I mean, I don't see how you could not.
Yeah. Well, I look at it this: you're either going to reflect or you're going to regret. And if you're going to regret,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to learn anything from that. That's just going to weigh you down. That's just going to weigh you down in life. But yeah, man. And what's great about it is that that you're learning a new skill. And when you're a white
Yep.
belt, and in a couple months, it's survival mode. That's all it is. You're just trying to survive,
Yeah.
You're just trying to, that's what I tell all the white belts in there. They're like, man, I'm not learning anything, man. I've been training for like 4 months and I just want to quit or whatever. He's like, man, white belt is all about survival.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about just surviving, And so if we look at something that we're starting, in our life, like whether it be a business or something like that, especially businesses, that first year, you're just trying to survive. You know what
Oh
I mean?
man. Yeah.
You're just trying to survive. You're just trying to keep your head above water, So like, even when I started coaching in this coaching business, that was it right there. You're just trying to survive. And this, what really kept me pushing forward, because, you're an entrepreneur. You hit so many roadblocks that first year. Everything's new.
Yep.
Everything's new. You got to learn everything. You got to learn sales. You got to learn marketing.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to do the thing. You just want to coach, but you don't have the money for you to pay for someone to advertise for you or to get the clients. So you got to learn all of that. You got to learn the accounting. You got to learn everything, And that's the thing too with jujitsu. Maybe you just like this one position. Maybe you just like this. But in order to be good, to be rounded, you got to learn everything. You got to learn how to take the guy down. You got to learn how to roll from your back. You got to know how to pass the guard. You got to kind of learn it. And the thing about it is that that there's never a ceiling that you're going to hit. Never put a ceiling. That once I learn this move and I think I master it, there's more to that. It's like a unending building blocks of Legos. There's just always more that you can add on to that. And we take that in life. That's the same too. There's really no ceiling to how far you can take your business. If you take jujitsu philosophy and put it into that, you can branch things off. You can create a franchise. You can do whatever. So jujitsu mentality keeps you from being stagnant. That's the way I see it, like mentally. Because if you take that and you put that in life, that there's always this next level. And then especially when you're rolling in a room where there's a ton of black belts and there's a ton of people that are way better than you, like, wow, there's another level to where I'm at. You know what I mean? And then, and it's the same if you take that philosophy into life, So yeah, man. So much learning, man. I think Renzo Gracie had this saying that there's more knowledge in the jiu-jitsu mats in his academy than there is in an Ivy League school.
I believe it. Well, I mean, people don't think about though, like
yeah.
Even striking is not so much, I don't think, as jujitsu, but like it's a big mental battle, man, because there's a lot of creativity that goes in jujitsu. Like you have to know man. what you're going to do. Like, I mean, and then there's the thing about fight IQ, which I don't think a lot of people understand. You hear like I can't tell you how many guys in high school or whatever, my early 20s, I would hear, when they fight, they just like they black out or whatever. It's just like they just, I don't know what it is. It's I guess it's in the adrenaline or whatever, but like, I mean, you got to be conscious, man. Like you got to know what the hell's going on there, And like, one thing I love rolling with higher belts is I can see, I can see when they anticipate where I'm going with something, and I'm like, damn, dude, this guy knows some stuff right here, man. Like he meets me there before I even get there,
Yeah.
It's like, it's crazy. Like, I don't even know. I can't even comprehend like how many actual moves there are for jiu-jitsu. Like, I don't even know what the number would be. Like how many different possibilities there are, for like different passes and sweeps and like,
Oh, it's endless. And the thing about it, it's evolving, you know, it's evolving. Like that's what's so great about like the main difference between traditional martial arts, I think, like karate, taekwondo, and jiu-jitsu is the creativity that you can use in jiu-jitsu. Like, in the kids class, when they're rolling and things like that, nothing is wrong. I'll never say, yeah, that's a wrong move, because the moves that you do is not that the move that I do that's good for me, like whatever, my half guard sweep or the way the way I pass the guard, it fits my body style. It fits who I am. It fits my age. Some guys pass really fast, but if you're a little bit older, sometimes you use more pressure. If you're a bigger guy, you use more pressure. Some of the young, agile guys, they're like jumping around, toreando passing, and so nothing is really wrong. You really get to use the creativity that fits for your body type and who you are. Like nothing's really like the sky's the limit for creativity in jiu-jitsu. The thing with traditional martial arts, right? And there's nothing wrong with this. It's very disciplined. Like there is a way you have to punch. There is a way you have to block, there is a certain way you have to do everything, and it has to be correct. Kind of almost military, you know what I mean? In these traditional, like they have what's called a kata. And this kata is like really exact steps. It's a form basically, right? And I remember this is the one thing that really discouraged me about Taekwondo, especially the belt testing. So they had belt tests, and the majority of the belt tests would be like breaking boards, and then you would have to perform this kata exactly. Like you like when you punch, your hand had to be in a certain angle and a certain thing, or you get points deducted. You had to take a certain amount of steps and things like that. And it was to show that you knew the moves and you knew how to punch and things and things like that. But this is not. And it showed a lot of discipline, because you'd have to practice this all the time. But in reality, that wouldn't work in a street fight, and it kind of diminished your creativity as well too, because
Right.
and the thing is, it kept the tradition. Maybe the same way I was doing this kata today is probably the same way they did it 100 years ago. So that tradition is like there, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the same exact, it's like cookie cutter for everybody, like you're not going to lose that, which is great, holding tradition. But what jujitsu is, the jujitsu that they have now to when it first started, it's totally different. It's totally different because it evolved so much.
Yeah.
It's like it has its own life form. It has its own life form. It's evolving. Like people are coming out with new moves every single day. And so that I think that's one of the main differences in what's so attractive about jujitsu is that one is you really get to use your creativity. You really get to use your creativity, and I think the second one is also like it really it becomes part of you.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean when I say it becomes part of you is it becomes it conforms to your body style. It conforms to your body style. Like if you're a tall, lanky guy, the moves that you mainly use are moves that you feel comfortable with that are made for a tall, lanky guy.
Right.
If you're short and heavy and stocky, the moves that you use are for that. And so like it kind of conforms to who you are as a person. It almost becomes like part of your identity almost, in a way. So yeah, but the creativity is big, because you just really get to use that. And the thing is like that carries over into real life as well too, like in your
Sure. Yeah.
business and things like that, because a lot of people don't have this creativity, they kind of keep that locked in, especially if you're in a job that's like 9 to 5 and you know exactly what you need to do. You got someone telling you to do. You're kind of like a robot, you're like, I got to do
Right.
some things. That's why jujitsu is like a release valve to your creativity. It's like, I could be creative now. I can try this. I could try that. Oh, I got caught in that. I got to do something else. You know what I mean? So, creativity is a really big thing, man.
No, yeah, for sure. I see that. Carlos, let me take a break really quick. Let me stop this. I want to take a break just for a second. And we'll be right back. All right, so yeah, I did want to touch on that with you. Like you're taking all these lessons from jujitsu, man, and you're talking about how we can apply them in different areas in life. And I think that's something that's really important to talk about because, like you said, I don't think we don't hear enough about that, And it's just I think it's helpful to talk to somebody in your position about how we can take those lessons and apply them in other areas in life. Because I don't know, man. Like, I'm just curious. Like, where do you think, had you never been in jiu-jitsu, like, where do you think you would be in life right now? Just
wow.
Yeah. Like, if you never started to train.
That's a really good question, and I would really hate to think where I would be in my life right now. You know what I mean? I know I wouldn't be here on a podcast, living in Brazil, talking to you.
Huh.
I would probably be overweight. If I wasn't incarcerated, which is the path that I was taking, in my teens before I started getting back, and it was like, man, getting back into martial arts, I would probably be incarcerated, either overweight, probably hooked on drugs if I wasn't incarcerated, and maybe not having the relationship I have with, not just with my wife, but with the people around me, man. Because in jiu-jitsu you meet so many good guys, not guys, I mean just people in general.
Right.
Women as well too. Because it's almost and I don't want to offend anybody that's not training in jiu-jitsu, but it's like almost a filtering out process. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because people that are really wanting to improve themselves, that are in this stage where they want to improve physically, mentally, they stick with it. They push themselves through the hard stuff, and so that carries on in their life. So you're really meeting like a lot of good people, and man, I'm in touch with them all the time. Some of my best friends, some of my best relationships right now are people that I met through jiu-jitsu,
Yep.
and so it would be that question is very hard, but I think I would be in a worse place than I would be right now, for sure.
Yeah. And you mentioned something about the people around you too, man. If you really think about it, that's the people that you want in your corner. That's the people you want to be, friends with, because if shit were to hit the fan, they're going to stay, they're going to be there, and they're going to tough it out and then do it. I mean, any person who has any sort of discipline, well, it doesn't have to be jiu-jitsu, whatever it is. If you are a disciplined person, you have something, whether it's goals you're trying to achieve, or if you're disciplined in your career, or whatever it is, it's almost like you can rely on those people more. You can depend on them. Like, I guess you could just trust them more. Is
Yeah.
kind of what it boils down to. But yeah, man, I definitely agree with that. You were talking about the lessons from jiu-jitsu. What do you think you would tell a person who's maybe like me, who's like just starting out, who's like really in there? Like, sometimes it's discouraging, man. Like, you're in there, you're getting your butt kicked. It seems like 9 out of 10 times you train, you're getting beat up. I mean, how do you just keep that mentality of like, just keep showing up, just keep getting after it, and just, like, one day you'll see it pay off, and it'll be, I'm assuming it's in little places here and there. Like, you go in, maybe you've been training, the last 10 times you've trained, you've got tapped out or submitted or whatever, but then you go in there one time, man, and you land a move on somebody, and you just feel great about that. Like, how do you just, I guess maybe how do you maintain that first little initial beginner's curve? Like, what do you think you would say to somebody in that situation?
Yeah, and this happens a lot, and I never want to see anybody like stop training jujitsu because, because they think it's too hard or something like that. You know what I mean? Because that's just an excuse, and in life itself, things are going to get hard, and what are you going to do? Quit,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so I never want it to be because it's hard. I don't accept that one for anything. You know what I mean? So what I like to do is, especially when it starts getting hard and you see that they're getting frustrated, I always tell people that first started out and then they go through the trial and then they start training and they're going through it, I let them know, first of all, like, hey man, you even mentioned it in the beginning, like the guys that have been there training, like, hey man, the first couple months, it's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. I don't say that, but I say, hey man, the first couple months, it's all about just surviving, right? Like, don't work on trying to submit people or outpower them or anything like that. It's just about surviving. So it's all about defending, just surviving, just trying to survive, right? And so I let them know that, like, you don't have to prove anything. It's all about just surviving, But a big thing that I like to do, that people that are training, maybe they're still white belts and they've been training for like a month or two, and they're like, man, this is too hard. It's getting difficult. I don't think it's for me, it's hard to say, like, no, just keep on going, you'll get better, like, just keep on pushing them. But I like showing them and saying, hey man, Jeff over there, right? He was like 50 pounds overweight when he started. Like, and Jeff is like is a stud, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's been training for 2 years, and he's like ripped, and like, he's really good at jiu-jitsu. I'm like, he was right there where you're at right now, and he just kept on pushing through, and they can't believe it, And what I have also is, like, I have them work with guys or other people that are kind of like in the position where the people that they're working with were in the position of this person that's wanting to quit. You know what I'm saying? So that they can have some kind of comparison. They're like, man, this is possible. Like, Jeff was here. He was 50 pounds over. He was thinking of quitting, and now he has not. So I guess to sum it all up is to show them the possibilities, right? If you don't stop, right? If you don't stop, first of all, just survive the first year, whatever that is for you, whatever that looks like for you, whether that be just, I like to say this, the first year, just master the art of showing up. If you show up, you're going to get something. If you master the art of just showing up, you roll one round, or you just do and go through the moves, but you don't want to spar today. I don't force anybody to spar, right? You want to sit on the wall and just chill? Cool, man. You know what I mean? You're going to get something by just watching, for sure. You know, you know, guys get injured all the time and they sit on the side, they show up and they sit on the side and you're watching and you're learning. You're learning if you just show up. So I tell them, man, master the art of showing up. And that goes with everything in life. If you master the art of just showing up in your relationship or showing up just for your kids, you're one step ahead of a lot of people because a lot of people just don't show up. So master the art of just showing up, you know, showing up, right? And then what I do is I show them the possibilities, right? Hey, man, this guy right here, he was right where you're at. You know what I mean? I show old pictures. We got before and after pictures on some guys. You know what I mean? Like if you see these before and after pics, like especially the really big changes, you know, like guy that was like 300 pounds. Now he's like $180, you know, like totally different person, lost a half a person, you know, we got a couple of those there, but I show them the possibilities, you know, and this is very important because people that start anything, even in life, when you come to this point where you want to quit or you want to give up or you want to like this comes to mind because the other day a client of mine called me up. He was in a really dark place and he's like, man, I just don't see a future anymore, man. He called me up out of nowhere and he's like, thanks for picking up, because he was at a point where he wanted to take his own life, right? And what I did there in this point is I had him think about the possibilities still that are still in front of him. And when you think of possibilities, you think of future, which means you think that you still have more life. And the fact that he gave me a call when he was in this dark space meant that he still wanted to live. Right. Because if he didn't, he would have taken his own life already. Right. So if we look in the jiu-jitsu sense, when you want to quit, when you want to give up, you can look at the possibilities, man. And the possibilities are the people and your peers around you that already reached the other level. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of the things there that if someone were to come to me and say, hey, man, I don't think it's for me. I kind of want to quit. You know, I kind of want to take a break or I want to kind of stop. You know, I say, hey, yeah, if it's because of family things, which happens, you know, or certain circumstances that happen in life, I'm okay with that, you know, but if I want to quit because it's getting too hard, I don't accept that. You know what I mean? I don't accept that. I'm like, hey man, look at the possibilities here. Look at Jeff, look at Mike over here. Like, let's talk to them. Look at these, the possibilities of where this can take you. And then I say, you know, like, let's just master the art of showing them. Maybe, you know, training 4 times a week is really hard on your body. You know, maybe you need to just turn it down a notch. You know, you don't need to go 100% all the time. You know, you don't need to prove anything to anybody over here, man. If you just show up and just, you know, do the warm-ups and then you watch the rest of the class, that's okay. Like, you're not training to be a professional fighter, right? You just, the guy's 40 years old. He just wants to get in shape and lose a couple pounds, man. I'm not gonna force him to be a UFC fighter. You know, like, you know, just show up. If you want to watch a little bit and then roll 1 or 2 rounds, that's cool. You know, so master just the art of showing up. Just show up. You know, whether that be, you know, if they're, you know, a lot of guys go and they're gun ho, they're training 5 days a week, and then that starts to take a toll. You know, that's like with anything, you know what I mean? Like if you start working out and you're like, man, I'm doing it 5 days a week. And then you go 3 months down the line, you're like, man, my body's killing me. And then, so what they do is like this, you're all in. And then after a while, you're like, man, I can't take it anymore. And then you just stop, you know? So it can't be like that. It has to be like this, just a steady flow, you know? So it's like, hey man, let's just turn it down a little bit the next couple months. You know, you're showing up 5 days a week, just do 3. You know, you're rolling every round, dude, just roll every other round, you know, don't be so hard on yourself, man. And another thing that I like to do, let's say the guy wants to quit, but he's already been in there for, you know, 6 or 8 months. Right. And I do this with a lot of my coaching clients that I've been coaching for a couple months, and like, man, this shit is not working. You know, I don't see it working. I don't see like this coaching working for me. My relationship's still shit, whatever. My business or in jiu-jitsu, it's like, man, I don't see jiu-jitsu working for me. It's not for me. I'm like, man, I want you to think back 5 months ago. Right. So basically what I'm telling them to do is look over your shoulder a little bit. Let's just stop and smell the flowers real quick here. Right. Where were you at 5 months ago in your relationship? man, my wife and I weren't even talking. We're like roommates, right? So where are you at now? Ah, man, she's sending me text message. We're talking, but we're having really hard discussions. Dude, you're
Right.
communicating. That's a step forward, man. Before she
Yeah.
didn't even want to be in the same room with you. Now you're really talking about some stuff, right? He's like, that's an improvement, right? Then I had the guys in jiu-jitsu. Man, where were you 5 months ago when you walked in the door? Think about that person you were. Who was that guy? Man, I was 30 pounds overweight. You lost 30 pounds in 5 months, man, right?
Yep.
Come on, man. Like imagine another year of this. Imagine if you keep on putting in the consistent work after another 6 months. Where will you be? So one is like the forward thinking of where you could be, but also let's just stop and smell the roses and look where you just came from a couple months ago. You know what I mean? When you start to see the progression, then that's more motivation for you. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like both places. Like let's just be present here. Let's look where you just came from. Okay, let's look what the possibilities are. Let's just keep on showing up every single day. Let's just master the art of just showing up and walking in the door. Let's just master the art of showing up for that hard conversation with your wife every single day, no matter where it goes. Let's detach from the outcome, right? Let's just show up every day, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I would tell somebody.
I love that, man. I love that. And see, this is what I love about this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear that you're able to take these lessons from jiu-jitsu and apply them to different areas in life. And I mean, I love that. And I think that's one of the many reasons that maybe you are where you are today is because you can take those lessons and apply them to other areas in life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were talking about this, that we haven't once talked about, a specific role or a move in jiu-jitsu. You've just been taking these lessons that you learn and basically like bringing it back full circle and tie them into life. And that's incredible, man, because I think that's got to be a skill in itself, for us to learn a lesson in one area in life and be able to apply that, in other areas. And I, like you mentioned too, about the first year being about survival. I wish I was on a level where I could like communicate and talk stories and strategies with you, but I simply can't. Like where you're at and where I'm at is just such an extreme difference. But I will say, from the beginning, from a very early beginner standpoint, I see what you're saying about survival and like what I've kind of tried to teach myself over the past couple of months of doing this is like just have composure of myself. If I get there and somebody's taking my back or their own mount or whatever, like freaking out and losing your breath is not going to help the situation. Just try to keep composure, stay calm, survive, tap if you need to, whatever it is, but just trying to just keep yourself together. I mean, dude, that was like when I rolled the first time, man, I was fighting for my life down there. I was like 10 seconds in, I was out of breath. I was trying to muscle everything. I had like the first couple times I rolled, man, my shoulders were bothering me a lot. And people were telling me that was because I was trying to muscle everything, basically bench press people off of me basically. And so, keeping that composure, man, and that's something to kind of tie it in the way you are, keeping your composure. If you're going to start anything new in life, keeping your composure has got to be at the top of the list as far as priorities go. Because if especially if you're starting a business, man, if something goes wrong, if you lose your composure, if you start to freak out, I mean, that's not going to help the situation at all.
No.
Just stay present, focus on what you can do, focus on the talents that you have, what's there immediately, and then you can think about, the next move. So I love the way you tie that in, man. I love the way that you're taking these lessons and you're talking about applying them in different areas in life.
Yeah.
Because, I think that's what it's all about. I think that's how we get the most out of whatever these experiences are,
Yeah. And I want to thank you for letting me go in that direction in this podcast. And we talked about this during the break. A lot of jiu-jitsu podcasts and things like this is about the moves, like what this guy accomplished in his jiu-jitsu career, in his competition, and the benefits as far as like losing weight and things like that.
Yep.
But there's so much more to that, man. There's so much more to that, and I think that's something that I want to share. I'm not the best competitor in jiu-jitsu. I'm it helped me become healthy and things like that, but there was so much more. It helped me so much in life, so like for people that for people that have never trained jujitsu or a martial art, you know, if you look at like these really famous, I guess you could call them philosophy books, like the Book of the Five Rings. Man, there's another famous Japanese one. It slipped my mind right now. But the authors were martial artists, you know, and they did the same thing that what we're talking about here. They took and it's not like they were practicing martial arts and that was it. They were practicing martial arts because of life and death. They were practicing it because they needed to protect their village or protect their people against the enemy. You know what I mean? And so if you take that, right, and not if you take that, if they took that, the lessons they learned basically on the battlefield, the lessons that you learn on the mat, and apply that to life. And now people are taking these books and applying that to their business and becoming successful, you know? So that's basically what I wanted to do here is still, you know, well, let's talk about martial arts. Basically it's war, these war philosophies, you know, and take them and say, hey man, you can apply these to your life as well too. Let's not forget that, like, these philosophies work in life as well too, you know? So, but the great thing is that the risk of applying these things, because you're going to fail the first time you apply these philosophies, the risk is less when it's on the mat. You're going to fail, you're going to tap, then you get to rework, you get to not even start from scratch because you learned something. So you have a new baseline now. You know, you got all these guys there or these people there that can help you. So you're constantly building a new baseline until you get over that. But if you do that in life, the risk is a lot more. Maybe you try something and then you lose your business, or you lose thousands of dollars, you know? And so it's not just a tap and then starting from a new baseline. You lose a couple $1,000 and yeah, you learned the lesson, but you know, you're out a couple $100,000 or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And so that the risk factor, I think, is less. So you can apply, you can be very creative here. And when you know what works, then you can bring that over into life, you know? So, yeah.
So what I'm hearing here, man, is that if we had to boil this down to a simple, just like if there is such a way to like condense this into one message, is that jiu-jitsu teaches you physical skills, but it also teaches you mental skills, and you can take those skills with you to other areas of life. I mean, you know, like we talked about earlier, putting yourself in these uncomfortable situations, building this mentality. There's not many things that's gonna help you the way a strong, solid mentality will, I think.
Yeah.
You know,
before we go on that, I just want to add one more thing that you did. You know, you said physical skills, mental skills, but I think the most important is life skills, man. Jiu-jitsu teaches you life skills, man. It teaches you, it encompasses everything in life. So I would say, I would like to add that in there. It definitely increases your life skills when you learn jiu-jitsu or any martial art at that. But, you know, I would say in my personal experience, jiu-jitsu encompasses a lot of that, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing that I love about jiu-jitsu or any martial arts really is that it teaches you confidence, but it humbles you at the same time. Like I don't know if there's anything else in life that'll do that the way martial arts will.
Yeah.
And I want to get your opinions on this too, because I know that somebody might hear this that has this question. I think there's a what would you call it? A fallacy, or maybe like a belief that people have that if they put their children in martial arts, it's going to make them more aggressive or, you know, prone to be a bully or things like that. And I don't think that's not true, right? If your children, you know, so in other words, if people have children and they put them in martial arts, doesn't that lessen the chance that they will be bullied? Because I think that's kind of a fear that maybe some parents have if they put their children in this environment, they don't want to make them overly aggressive or whatever. But you know, I'll be honest with you, man. I don't know if there's anything that could be more beneficial for a child than that, you know?
Yeah. And a lot, you know, they have Tom DeBlast. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's really big in the jiu-jitsu community, and he has this anti-bullying program where he gets kids that are bullied and finds them schools to sponsor them, and he'll even pay for them. But yes, the thing is this, right? How does the saying go? It says, when you possess, man, it's at the tip of my tongue, but it's about possessing a certain power and having great responsibility because you have this power, right? Have you heard that quote before? Like,
so I've heard something similar to that. Do you know who Jordan Peterson is?
Yes.
Okay, so he says that when you talk about being a good person, he says man specifically, but he says a good man is not a harmless man. A good man is a very dangerous man who has that under voluntary control.
Yes.
You know, so, and I mean, like I think what you're talking about with this power, it's like this ability to protect yourself or the people around you. If I'm not mistaken, if that's where I don't know the specific quote that you're talking about, but this is what I can try to look it up.
No. I think with great responsibility, with great power comes great responsibility. I think it was a Marvel quote or something like that, a superhero quote.
Oh, that was Spider-Man. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it, right? When children know that they have this great power, right? Like they have this power. I feel, because I feel jiu-jitsu is like a superpower almost, that you have to have great responsibility, right? In using that. And that's what it teaches. It teaches you control. Like, that you have this great power. Like if you train for 6 months, you have more power and more ability to hurt someone that hasn't trained at all. You know what I mean? Walking down the street. Person that's been training 6 months is very dangerous, So you have this responsibility. And that's what I teach the kids. You have this responsibility, because now you have this power. I tell my kids that too, as well too. You have this responsibility for yourself and and people that don't have this power to protect them, And so I think one is that, you have this, but also that I don't know, more so with kids because they don't have ego, but for men, or not men, but adults, it just really crushes your ego. You know what I mean? You don't have an ego when you train jiu-jitsu. They even have signs that says leave your ego at the door, because if you don't, it's going to get smashed on the mat for sure. And that, and I think a lot of bullying and things like that have to do with ego as well too. It's a show of power. It's your ego. And I think once you know how to control that, because I think ego in some places can be a helpful thing, but when you're walking around all the time with a big ego and you're using your ego to put people below you, I think that becomes very hurtful. I think then ego is going into a bad place, right? So I think jiu-jitsu in that aspect also helps with that. And, I'm going to be honest with you. Since I started training jiu-jitsu, I used to get into fights a lot in high school, right? I used to get into fights a lot pre-jiu-jitsu. But since I got into jiu-jitsu, knowing that I have this, I only had to use it once in my life on the street, But since then, I've been confronted many a times, for fights and things like that. But because I know what I know, I didn't need to prove anything to anybody. I don't need to prove like, I'm going to go pick a fight, or I'm going to fight somebody because of this. Like, I let all the small stuff go because, one, I didn't have the ego, and I knew that, hey, this guy's either drunk or, I could definitely take him out. You know what I mean? If I really wanted to, and I don't have to, I'm going to be defensive here, not offensive, So knowing that you have this superpower gives you great responsibility, to use it in a responsible way. And that's something that's instilled with the kids,
Yeah. That's a great way to phrase that, because, I don't know, man. I think, I've also heard too that like people who practice martial arts are usually the people who are least likely to engage in a street fight, like what you said, unless it's absolutely necessary. Which I don't know. I think when it comes to street fights, man, I think de-escalating a fight is just as much of a skill as the actual fight itself. because it takes a lot of humility to like swallow your pride and say, listen, man, don't want any problems or whatever. Especially like a guy like you, if you could really, like if you could really take this guy out, but your ego or whatever, your pride, whatever it is like kept in check to where you, like you said, you feel like you don't have to do that, and I don't know. I would imagine, just being in martial arts over the years and kind of getting on the mats and going through the journey, tapping out, being beat up or whatever. That's got to contribute to that. I mean, just kind of being in there and putting yourself in that situation. I'm assuming that's one of the things that gets you there, because I think it's like a real white belt mentality to say, okay, I've been training 6 months, let me go pick a fight with somebody. Like I can't imagine somebody on your level doing something like that.
Well, the thing is that I think one thing we didn't touch on, but maybe we can mention now, is the confidence that's built with jiu-jitsu, right? So you have this confidence, not saying I'm walking around with my chest out like, man, I'll kick your ass, like you have this confidence in you that, like you said, Jordan Peterson, like a man or a person is someone that can possess this power. I'm gonna butcher the whole quote, but someone that could do a lot of damage.
Yep.
Like you have this confidence, like, man, I can do some damage here if I really wanted to, but having that control, so I have this confidence, that if things were going to go wrong, if someone were to threaten me or my family, that I would be able to handle this person, so I have this confidence, and that just doesn't show in myself in a street fight or anything like that, but in life as well too. If I walk into a meeting or I walk into a room, that confidence shows there as well, and it's going to show when I speak. It's going to show when I talk. It's going to show in my body movements as well too. Like, man, this guy's confidence in it has confidence in himself, and with confidence comes the belief in yourself. So knowing and believing that, man, I've been training. That I know this thing, that definitely builds confidence to know that, I just don't sweat the small stuff anymore. You don't need to sweat this drunk guy, like calling you names or what have you, that, you can definitely do the damage if need be, but why? Right.
Yeah. Carlos, I know you got to get out of here in a couple minutes, man.
Yeah.
Do you have a website or social media or anything you want to promote? I know you got a couple groups on Facebook and everything, or whatever it is you want to promote.
Yeah, sure. And I really appreciate that. So yeah, well, first of all, I'm for all your followers there, I am a coach. I consider myself a visionary coach. So I like taking people and taking them from where they are now into where they see themselves in the future. Right. Okay. And so we come up with that vision, and then we work on the steps in between. And and the steps in between where you are now and in your vision, you hit a lot of roadblocks, right? You have these fears, you have these limiting beliefs about yourself, like I can't do it, or I'm scared to do it. And that's where the work comes in. That's where I help you at there, right? So my website is called everythingisinternalwork.com, right? And that's very important to know why I named it that, because everything that you want externally in life, whether that's a better relationship, whether that's, more, health, physical health or mental health or anything like that, that has to come internally first. Everything externally that you want in this life, it takes internal work first. And so that's what we work on. We work what's internally first, and that will show externally. So that's my website, everythingisinternalwork.com. And I have 2 groups that I run on Facebook, and they're completely free. So I run a men's group, right? And right now we have 3 free Zoom calls. And this is these Zoom calls it's basically this whole men's group, and the Zoom calls is a safe space for men to become better fathers and husbands, right? And on my website, it has a link there, but the name of the group is Men United to Become Better Fathers and Husbands, right? Then the reason why I created this group, because I did not have the ideal male role model growing up. My father was there until my teenage years, and in the story, my parents divorced, and he kind of went his own way. and then I kind of was walking in his footsteps, and going the wrong way as well too. And then I found myself going in the wrong way in my first marriage and all my other relationships. And so I really had to find how to become a man, how to become a husband, and how to become a father. And in that journey, I've helped other men. And so I created this group to support other men. It's completely free. Like I said, we have 3 Zoom meetings where men come in, and we meet 3 times a week. It's not mandatory or anything like that, but it's just a safe place where we can lean in and be vulnerable. And it's like the jujitsu mats. You know, you walk in there as a white belt, but there's other people that have been there where you were at in maybe
Right.
your relationship or in your life. And then there's people that are going through it with you. There's people that are ahead of you, maybe, that have gone through that and are past that. So there's a lot of knowledge in these groups, and it's a safe space, because I think that's one of the biggest things. They say the second leading cause of death for men in the United States is suicide. And that's because we don't talk. That's because it's hard for us as men to show vulnerability, because it was taught to us that, like, it's a sign of weakness, and it's not. It's a sign of strength if you're able to be vulnerable, right?
Exactly.
So this group is for that. So any men out there that need some support, Men United to become better fathers and husbands, look me up on Facebook. And I hold another group, another free Facebook group, which is called the Accountability Mastermind Community. And basically this group, it's a Facebook group with a WhatsApp group. And it's basically, we have a community of people that have goals. And so we set goals for ourselves. And then we break those goals down into small daily steps, right? And then we hold each other accountable. And the accountability happens basically in this WhatsApp group. We post what our intentions are for the day, right? And then at the end of the day, we see, we have a check-in, basically a roll call, to see how intentional our day is, how purposeful our day was, to see what steps we got. And they have this saying, like, all your each day, what you do every single day, the choices you make every day compound over time, and so whatever that goal is, we re-engineer that back, and then we take those daily steps, and eventually, we hit that goal, we hit that target. So it's the Accountability Mastermind Community. It's on Facebook as well too, and it's on my website. There's a link there to join that for free. And so I also have 2 other paid programs. One is one-on-one coaching. I do that. And there's a link on my website for that as well too. And like I said, I'm a visionary coach, so we work on what you want to be, or where you see who this ideal person is in the future. And then we take those steps and we work through all those limiting beliefs and those fears in the middle to get you there. And I also have a group coaching program, which is a paid group coaching program, where we really go into, I would like to call it, high performance habits, right? And so we go into habits of performing at a higher level in your life. So we meet once a week. And we meet once a week in this group, and we just have a specific topic, whether they be like working on your energy, working on time management, working on communication or better relationships, these high level habits. And we talk about that, we discuss that, and then we set challenges for each other in this group. And there's a link on my website on that as well too, to join that group. But yeah, a lot.
Yeah, man. If you can send me all those links, I'll put them in the description, so wherever this is shared, it people can see it. But
awesome,
Carlos, I appreciate it, man. Listen, I love how you connected all this stuff together. You were asking me earlier if I had a certain direction to take this thing, and you done it in a much better way than I could, because like I said, the skill levels are just such different. Like, I wouldn't even know the questions to ask you if I wanted to about the technical stuff, So I love that you were able just to connect this stuff in and tie it all in, man. And just show people, the value of these lessons and how to apply these lessons in different areas of life.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you doing what you did here, because it really, I'll be honest with you, this was actually better than I think the plan I had, which was just to, I don't even know what my plan was, because I don't even know I don't even know what to ask you. Like, I know about 5 moves, not saying I can even do them, but I know about 5 moves in jiu-jitsu, and we that would have covered like 7 minutes. So we would, but no, I do appreciate it, man. I appreciate how you tied all this stuff in, and it's always good talking to you, man. I know the first time we had a good conversation. And again, for anybody listening, that's episode 11, YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. YouTube and Spotify are the video versions. Everything else is the audio. So, but man, I know you got to get out of here. I do appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. If I could just leave some final words, man, I appreciate you creating the space for people. I listened to some of the other episodes as well too, and man, I love the positivity and the optimism and the people that you bring on to showing possibilities of what can actually happen. I know a lot of people share their stories in there, and I think that's great. To me, it sounds like people are sharing the hero's journey. Coming from here and going to there, and I love that story. There's no better story than that. The hero's journey, man. So thanks for creating the space, and thanks for having me on here. I really appreciate that, man.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. And likewise, let me, Carlos, I'm going to stop the video, but I do appreciate it, man. Let me let you know about the uploading situation.
Sure.
But appreciate your time, man. Hey guys, I appreciate everybody tuning in today. If you enjoyed this podcast or enjoyed this episode, you can find more at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. There you can subscribe, like, and share and interact with all of our content. Again, we appreciate it, and we will see you next time.